Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, January 9th, 2025. Time for yet another show, and time to have, startup problems. Something went on today. I don't know. I think I raced over to the computer, and I was more or less on time, and I think I hit a couple, I smashed down my hands on the keyboard to try to wake the thing up, because it had drifted off to sleep as I wandered away and took care of other errands in the morning. And I guess one of the keys that you can hit on one of the computers anyway, I guess, pauses all soundboard activity. And I don't really know which key that is, as a matter of fact, or whether it was even hit. But then all of a sudden I put on the headphones and said, all right, time to wind down the prelude music and move into the interlude music. And all of a sudden, hey, there's no sound here. And I'm pressing the buttons and nothing's happening. What's going on? So it takes you a little while. Panic a little bit. Now I remember. Oh, right. The pause all button. Did that get hit? Let me take a look. Yeah, there it is. All right. So about 13 seconds behind here. But all right. Well, we caught up and I think timed everything correctly such that the editorial staff will not have a problem at the end of the show and getting things lined up. Also, the happy return once again of Greg's Raft O Stories to the Skype background chat. I don't know what the issue was there, but everything seems to have settled itself there. I'm sure that we did something, to the configuration of Skype on my end, and no one knows how it was undone, or else they secretly screwed something up and then up with an update and then re-updated and got it all straightened out. Anyway, lots to catch up on. As always, then now we're getting into the crazy season, by which I mean we're nearing a Trump administration. 4 years of a fire hose of insanity, and usually matched by a fire hose of insistence from everybody we're watching the insanity along with, that the insanity that they prefer to de-emphasize is the wrong insanity. You need to be focusing on the right insanity. Okay, so maybe we'll give that a try. Let's see. There's lots of stuff happening in courts, more explainers about what's happening in the courts, and I think the legal eyes are turning to this weird request for emergency relief from the Supreme Court in the New York case. And the general consensus from people who know how the law used to work is that this doesn't make any sense to us. There's no jurisdiction here. The court should not be doing anything. And yet, I believe you will find the court doing something, or at least considering doing something, which they also should not be doing. But nonetheless, it has been demanded by Donald Trump, and when Donald Trump demands something, the world stops to figure out sometimes how crazy the demand is, but the attention is paid, and that's mostly what he craves. I wish there was a way we could figure out not to give him that attention, but that's his particular genius. If there is one, any type of genius operating in that brain at all, it's how to get people to pay attention to me even when I don't deserve it and there's no real reason to do so. That's his sort of specialty. And I guess if he doesn't feel like he's getting enough attention, he says, I am going to mandate that everybody give me at least one viable creamsicle per day. I want 300 million creamsicles, one from each man, woman, and child in this United States, delivered to my doorstep daily, or else I'm going to deport everyone. And then you have to report, a guy who allegedly, is going to be president has said this thing, and now we all need to look at, we're going to interview creamsicle experts. Do we have enough production? What about transportation? Is it really just bluster? Will he forget about it? You're being distracted from the real issue, which is last week's demand for pepperoni pizza. That's even worse because the demands on the dairy industry and something cows, methane, it's hard to keep track of it all. So we turn that job over to Greg Dworkin, who's going to explain it all and make sense of it in just a moment. Good morning, Greg. Go.
Well, the big problem, I think, is that the impending national ketchup
Oh, yes.
deficit is really going to hit hard at the Trump administration, because what's he going to throw against the wall? So
right, he's going to confiscate your
he's
ketchup, ladies and
proposing
gentlemen.
a national ketchup reserve.
Yes.
Where he's going to put all the ketchup into it and then just pull it out as needed, just in case there's a boycott from overseas.
Less, that means, right, quite obviously, as a matter of pure scientific fact, less for you, more for him. He's going to steal your ketchup. Let's put it in the newspaper headlines.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to talk about. I will say that
Please do.
You could step back. Well, I will anyway.
Right.
And you could step back and say, look,
please don't.
This is really depressing that we're back into chaos territory, because Trump chaos policy, and policy people hate chaos. On the other hand, you have to remember that with the chaos comes multiple court cases against Trump and his cronies, because they always do something illegal. And then also the political infighting, which is chaos, squared.
Right.
Because
that's
everybody
too.
hates each other. And as people who have worked deeply with the Trump administration have told not just me, but yes, they have told me personally, but not just me, but everybody else, you have to remember they're not only evil, they're really stupid.
Yeah, well, that's true, and they are a little bit easy to read and program. You can't predict what craziness they'll say, but there will be some.
And there'll be some bad things that cannot be prevented.
And
of course, as you were pointing out in your intro,
I had an intro.
The ability of people who used to know how the law works, in terms of interpreting what's going on, is decent. But it's the Supreme Court, totally corrupt, and you have no idea what they're going to do. And if they take a case,
big story
it's bad news, because they shouldn't be taking the case. Well, it may not be what it appears, and it may not be as bad. No, every single time it's worse.
we keep missing the mark on that one. It might be
it's
that
worse.
they're just
it's worse because well, maybe they'll do this really narrow reading. No, they do this over expansion. Whatever he does is okay, and that's the new law.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do about it?
Nothing. I mean, I don't know. Something, but nothing right now. I don't know. The only thing I can do is remind people of that fact.
Of expanding the Supreme Court? Now I am.
Yeah, okay.
These guys are awful.
Yeah. Well, they are. All right. So now we know what it takes to drive that decision for certain folks.
Letting Trump do what he wants
is what's
driving the decision. These guys are completely corrupt, and they have to, leave.
And a new angle on that story today, in fact. We'll get to it. We'll get to a lot of stuff,
but first we're going to start overseas.
Okay.
And we're going to play a game. Because I got at least two of them. Maybe I have more, but I know I have two.
I have at least two C's. So go
ahead. All right. Who is? We get to play Who Is.
Who is?
You ever hear this guy? You know who this is? Who is Tommy Robinson?
Oh, I have a vague notion.
And why does Elon Musk want him free from jail?
That is a good question. And in fact, I've been meaning to get back to this because a couple of days ago I read something about Elon Musk doing something, Tommy Robinson, and and we didn't get back to why did that name come up? Yeah, my vague recollection is he's like, I don't know. I think of him as a British Proud Boys kind of guy, and he lies somewhere between thug and politics.
Yeah, he's in prison.
Oh, and prison. Yes.
Because he's a violent Nick Fuentes, basically.
Yeah, British everything is a little violent, isn't it? You go to a soccer game and they're kind of violent.
Did you know? We can play Who Is and Did You Know?
Yeah.
Did you know is a subcategory of, I just looked it up, so therefore I sound like an expert. Did you know?
Very few people know this.
That Tommy Robinson is not his real name.
I knew that. I read it once. I don't know what his real name is. It's
Stephen Yaxley Lennon, and he took the name Tommy Robinson because it was a relatively infamous soccer hooligan.
Oh, okay.
Which tells you a lot about who he is.
Interesting thing, these guys. Yeah, to name yourself after a soccer hooligan. Yeah,
exactly.
That's pretty weird.
Margaret Thatcher was taken, so we took Tommy Robinson.
I gotta say, I don't know. I think I have the wrong impression of British hooligans, but I don't know. There are a lot of bluster. I think our American hooligans can beat up their British hooligans.
Well, the problem is that we think British hooligans are like Andy Capp, but no, they're a lot worse.
Hot fries, right? Well, nothing. What could be worse than those?
So who is Tommy Robinson, says NBC News, and why does Elon Musk want him freed from jail? Robinson is serving an 18-month jail sentence for contempt of court, a charge stemming from a libelous video in which he falsely claimed a refugee teenager, immigrant refugee teenager, was a violent thug.
And
he got caught at it, and
he
got put in jail. Unlike, they're eating the dogs and cats guy. All right, so here's how the story goes. A convicted, and this guy's a pretty long record, a convicted fraudster with a violent criminal record, Tommy Robinson is well known as the leader of the English far right. And before we get into this too much, let me read this other paragraph from this piece.
All right.
He is widely disliked in Britain. Robinson's 19% popularity rating is even lower than Musk's 26, according to the latest findings published in October by YouGov, a British polling company.
Interesting.
So Musk may not have the clout he thinks he has. So don't be scared by this. Just follow it and scratch your head and say, what the?
What the? Yes.
All right. It's been jarring for many Britons to see Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, Fatang, became the latest cause championed by the richest person on the planet, Elon Musk. Free Tommy Robinson, said Musk on X.
Whereas I want to charge for Tommy Robinson.
Right. He will become less fringe if people adopt him. And that's why they're worried about Tommy Robinson in Britain, the political scientists. This is far from Musk's first intervention in European politics. And I'm doing this because this will give you an idea of what's coming. Because Musk is going to overreach. They always do. But some of the ways are going to be really harmful. And so this will give you an idea of what's coming. So you can brace yourself.
Brace. I'm doing it.
Wearing braces. This is far from Musk. When do the braces come off? In 4 years. This is far from Musk's first intervention in European politics, and he has increasingly opined on the subject since backing Trump's election win in November. The Tesla and SpaceX CEO has largely supported far-right nationalists, most recently in Germany, where he went in on AfD.
All right, yes.
The rise on the continent has coincided with Trump's second term. It is in Britain, however, where Musk has focused most attention. In recent months, he's accused Keir Starmer, that is the British Prime Minister, Labour Prime Minister. They took over from the Tories when the lettuce went bad.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Okay.
He accused, it was the guy in the middle, but, the interregnum there, but it didn't really matter. By the time it was all said and done, the Brits wound up hating the Tories. In recent months, he has accused Keir Starmer of running a tyrannical police state and going full Stalin, stark contrast to domestic criticism, which has often seen the Prime Minister accused of being too centrist and selling out his leftist roots. But, that's there. This is here. Musk also predicted Britain would descend into civil war after the August murders of 3 girls in the northern seaside town of Southport sparked widespread rioting led by the far right. The disorder was partly blamed by both police and politicians on false rumors spread on X.
No.
Including by Musk. And on Friday, Musk supported a call for King Charles to dissolve Parliament, which he technically has the power to do, but hasn't done in 200 years.
What do they call it over there when he dissolves Parliament?
Right.
Proroguing?
Yeah, something like that. Many treated this as little more than muppetry and trolling.
Muppetry?
But
wow.
Yeah, because they have a whole.
It's not just puppetry
of political satire with puppets over there.
That's the old guys in the balcony.
But Musk's interaction with Robinson. But Musk's interaction with Robinson has raised more eyebrows. Musk first started replying to Robinson on X in August, but that ramped up significantly this week when he began posting about Britain's grooming gangs.
Grooming gangs. They're combing their hair the same way?
And Musk is trying to tie them to Keir Starmer because that sort of thing is unpopular.
Okay.
The thing is, Tommy Robinson is really unpopular. And so there's a problem. Tommy Robinson is anti-immigrant.
Yeah.
And during the time that he was, back in 2005, he was first jailed for assaulting an off-duty police officer. I mean, the guy's a thug. In order to do community service in 2011 for leading a brawl involving more than 100 soccer fans,
You can
he
beat
was
him
imprisoned
up,
again in 2013 for traveling to the U.S. on somebody else's passport. A year after that, he was imprisoned for mortgage fraud.
Mortgage fraud, really? Okay.
He was also given a 5-year stalking protection order in October 2021 when he shouted abuse at a journalist's home who was planning to write about him. Wow. And during that time, he co-founded something called the EDL, the English Defense League.
I see. That is not
which
about
is a
soccer.
network of far-right groups in whose virulently Islamophobic views, the EDL, were praised by Norwegian mass murderer Anders Behring Breivik.
How did you
He's
know?
Not popular.
Right. Does he have a? How did his praise get out of prison? I'm curious about the communications from these guys. Like this guy's tweeting with Elon Musk. You're in jail.
Yeah. He would personally send every adult male Muslim that has come into the EU over the past 12 months, not the UK, the EU, over the past 12 months back tomorrow if I could. He said Islam is a fascist religion, and he's hinted at violent retribution. Robinson is no longer associated with the EDL. He's repeatedly said he's not racist or Islamophobic.
Well, that's not true.
And so this is who Musk is backing. Now,
there
is a guilt by association problem here.
Oh. Well,
Musk also supports Nigel Farage, the head of the Anti-Immigration Reform UK party.
Okay.
Farage wants nothing to do with Robinson.
Oh.
Any sane UK politician wants nothing to do with Robinson.
Oh, well,
and
get over
Musk it. Talks about them together.
That's okay. It'll be fine.
Right. Now, while certainly hard-right reform, which is 5 parliamentary lawmakers, is considered a far more mainstream force than Robinson, and some pundits have suggested that Musk's endorsement of Robinson could harm Farage, but can Musk's apparent fixation with British and European politics actually make a difference? We don't know.
Yes.
Said the political scientist there. He thinks renewed focus on immigration has at least opened the door. What we know is British politics has already been damaged, so there's an opportunity. And, basically, that's bad. So that's who Tommy Robinson is.
All right. I'm trying to remember what it was that it was mentioned in passing. It was something we were reading about Elon Musk, and it might have been like 2 weeks ago already. And there was something about, I think we were reading somebody's Blue Sky post about and how does Musk even know who Tommy Robinson is? And we just sort of said it in passing, and I was like, why did Tommy Robinson come into this?
Because
now I know.
Because he's an Elon Musk deck of fascist trading cards.
Yes, I guess so.
And he has the rookie card for Tommy Robinson, which he prizes.
And I read that we hadn't seen the card, but I didn't turn it over and read the stats that day. And now we have to do that.
The stats are like his prison term. That's what's on the back.
Yeah, I don't know. This, we'll see what happens with this. British thugs are weird. We have better armed thugs, and they're usually larger.
Wait, there's more.
Oh, okay.
So I have a follow-up story.
Okay.
This one is in Politico, and it was. Is this Politico Europe? It looks like it's Politico EU.
Okay.
For some reason, they're more interested in European and British stuff than we are. Elon Musk faces UK backlash after boosting far-right activist Tommy Robinson. But now you know who Tommy Robinson is, so I had to do that.
So here comes the backlash. That's UK.
Ex-owner and Donald Trump ally accused of spreading poison after he backs jailed activist.
Yes.
Right? And this is a free article, usually reserved for subscribers. How nice.
Well, then we've entranced into this somehow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Elon Musk is facing fierce criticism from British parliamentarians. Well, you know what that means. You fire the parliamentarian if you don't agree. We know that here from
that's stupid parliamentarian. Yeah.
Order! After he called for far-right ringleader Tommy Robinson to be released from prison, the ex-owner and key ally tweeted Thursday morning that authorities should free Tommy Robinson. And I suspect this is last Thursday, not today, Thursday. Robinson, the controversial English Defense League founder, over there you know what EDL is. Here you have to explain it.
Yes.
Whose anti-immigration rallies in the UK attract thousands, was jailed for 18 months last October after breaching a court order. Musk's comments came amid an ongoing feud with the UK's governing Labour Party and just days after the tech billionaire spoke out in support of Germany's far-right Alternative for Germany, AFD, that's not their name in German. Basically the new Nazis, must support not just for Tommy Robinson, but also AFD, shows just how big a problem he is for democracy, as well as the reputation of those that cozy up to him, like Nigel Farage or Liz Truss. Labour MP Stella Creasy, whose constituency saw a major counter-demonstration against the far right last summer, told Politico, so she feels secure because her constituency doesn't like these people. And as we saw, most Brits don't like these people. Yeah. Fair to say with those numbers, 19, 26, for Musk in terms of approval. Truss, the former British Prime Minister, has previously expressed support for Musk and said his proposed Department for Government Efficiency, set to feature in Trump's second presidency, was needed in Britain. Again, it's a proposed department. Thank you for saying that. It is not a real department. Doesn't have funding. Even really doesn't have people who work there.
Right.
It's just
it will never be a department. No one's actually proposed making it a department. It's just they like to think of things as departments.
They proposed making a proposal.
They might even not have done that, but okay. Yeah. Anyway, it's certainly not a government department, and you shouldn't use that without saying something about it.
And then here's the story about Musk and Tommy Robinson. And what's the very next paragraph? Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, meanwhile, met Musk at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in December and has talked up the prospect of receiving a donation. Reform declined to comment on Musk's latest statement Thursday, so it's making trouble for Farage. Robinson was in prison last year after he admitted to breaching a court order relating to false claims about a Syrian schoolboy he had made in a documentary. Musk on Thursday approvingly shared the documentary to his hundreds of millions of followers on X.
So what you're saying is that Elon Musk is sharing illicit videos about schoolboys online.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
A fourth sought, but I'd be interested in the community note on that because that's the only fact checking there is these days. A fourth sought to praise Musk while drawing a red line over his backing of Robinson, saying, "I don't think Tommy Robinson has anything to say about government efficiency or anything that reckons with the condition of working people." This is Labor.
Oh, okay.
They added.
I also don't think that.
But this is an MP who
won't
go on the record, and when you see the comments, you'll see why. Oh. There's something remarkable about Elon Musk's startup spirit. Backing Tommy Robinson is a perversion of it.
See, I told you he was a pervert.
Right. Danny Chambers, an MP for the centrist Liberal Democrats, the Lib Dems as they're known, and the party's spokesperson on mental health said it was really concerning that a billionaire with his own social media platform is supporting a far-right activist. Could have added,
and the same is true of Elon Musk.
Health, and this guy's nuts. He could have added that, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Musk has the financial resources and the social media reach to influence the news agenda and the narrative, and so his support for Tommy Robinson could be hugely damaging to our political discourse.
Yeah, and please don't forget that there are two mentally unstable billionaires with their own social media platforms.
Right. So, as a U.S. citizen, Musk is not allowed to make direct donations to UK political parties.
I'm not even sure he's a U.S. citizen, but yes, go on.
But election finance experts have argued that he could set up a new UK-registered company, and the company could give money. And he's certainly got the money to do that.
That sounds like a difficult hurdle to overcome for a billionaire.
Yeah. I was going to say, what are you referring to the law? U.S. law? This is the UK, and he's got infinite resources.
That's true. On the other hand, if you look at somebody funny, you can get charged with slander or libel in the UK, which is interesting.
Which is why they're all off record.
Yeah.
When they talk about him.
Okay.
While Labour MPs were quick to slam Musk's intervention, Prime Minister Keir Starmer kept out of it. That one that was praising, they listed it as a fourth. They said, here's a Labour MP, here's a Labour MP, here's a Labour MP, and here's a fourth MP. But they didn't specifically label it as Labour. The way the story reads is it sounds like it's Labour.
Yeah.
But what they said doesn't sound like it's Labour. So I don't know. Some MP thought they could find something good to say about Musk. If it is Labour, get rid of him.
Okay. The M here is for Musk. Musk person.
Take their I forget what they call when you're not allowed to speak for the party anymore. Take your mace away or whatever.
Yeah,
they have fancy
snatch your wig. I don't know. Are they wearing wigs? Take that guy's wig off. He's not allowed to speak. Hit him with the mace. Yell order. I don't know what they do. Yeah, it's a term maybe if I heard it again, I'd say, I heard that once.
If I came across it again, I would remember.
Right. But as it is, no.
They take the whip.
Crow.
Is that
no,
it?
That's not it. I don't know. Take the fifth. Drink a fifth. I don't know. That's a good question.
We'll try to figure it out on the break.
Okay. It's so troublesome. We're going to have to research it.
Yes.
God.
What does taking the whip mean? The move essentially expels the member from their party, meaning that while they can remain on the green benches, they have to sit as an independent MP. So it's taking the whip. I was right.
Taking the whip.
They took the whip away
benches.
From that Labor person who praised Musk. At least they would if they knew who it was.
If it was such a person. It could have been an Ulster Unionist. I don't know.
So in Musk's latest attacks on Labor, he claimed that the party had failed to initiate an inquiry into historic child abuse in the northern English town of Oldham, only because it'll show those in power were complicit in the cover-up.
Of course. Doesn't it always?
There were gangs who were grooming girls, and the accusation from the far right is, A, the government didn't do enough to fix it, but that's especially true if it was a local labor government, and B, and they were probably immigrants anyway.
All right. Now, these aren't Republicans, but they are conservatives in their own right, and you need to know that in the UK, you would have to substitute conservatives or Tories for Republicans. Every Republican accusation is a confession. Anytime they accuse a Democrat or their opposition of doing something, that is probable cause for their arrest, in my
point
view.
Being that Musk is trying to bring down Keir Starmer, and that's like a BFD, as Joe Biden would say.
Yeah, well, he's the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. That is a big deal. You can't do that, but he's going to try anyway, and no one can touch him because he's got several $1 billion, I guess. The end, unless his plane crashes. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And I don't know, Elon Musk is a pedophile, I guess. That's all I'm reading out of this.
That in UK.
I didn't. And if you heard this in the UK, you said it.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah, well.
You said it.
You said it, buddy. This is Elon Musk in Politico finishing this part.
Politico
he implied
EU.
that Keir Starmer, who, by the way, currently is the Labour Prime Minister, who launched extensive reforms to how the Crown Prosecution Service handles child sex abuse cases at the time that Starmer was leading the Crown Prosecution Service. I add that, you'll see why. Did not do enough to prosecute child grooming gangs when he ran the organization between 2008 and 2013. Now, it was the Crown Prosecution Service he ran, not the child grooming gangs,
which probably don't exist anyway. But yeah, right. Let's get that straight, shall we? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are they
chartered?
chartered?
And they got prosecuted for it.
I see. By Keir Starmer and the Crown Prosecution Service, which I thought was prosecuting people who had crowns, which is a much more exciting prospect. But I see what you mean.
Not
on behalf of the Crown. there.
So in a sign of Musk's growing influence, the opposition conservatives voted out of office in July after 14 years in government, spent Thursday echoing his demand for a focus on tackling rape gangs in the UK with a dedicated public inquiry. An inquiry in the handling of child sexual abuse in the UK already wrapped up in 2022. The Tories now argue it didn't go far enough. They didn't then, but now they do.
Mm-hmm.
And now they want to know the release of ethnicity data on perpetrators.
I see. Because they want to be racists.
Yes, exactly.
And this will justify
that's where the poison seeps in. It's not that Tommy Robinson gets let out of jail.
Yeah.
The backlash is that Nigel Farage gets tarred even more and becomes even more unpopular. But the real poison is that ordinary, average, everyday Liz Truss style conservatives, Tories in the UK, feel perfectly free to say, we think there's too much rape going on and we want every rape accusation to be accompanied by the ethnicity and background. Even anonymous accusations, because we need to know, is this really their birth certificate and are they from Kenya?
Right. Now, if they got the facts, I think they would be rather surprised. Oh, no, we're the rapists. But
they don't want to know that.
Yeah,
and that's
instead,
not why they're doing
AI will give you alleged pictures of documentation saying that the people who committed rapes that may or may not have actually happened are the people you need them to be politically, and golly, isn't that enough for us to take power, or here in this country maybe, deport them / kill my neighbor who, had a sign in their yard for the opposing political party.
Right. And so here is the last and a much shorter discussion of who is.
Yes.
Who is Joseph Aoun, Lebanon's new president?
Oh.
Whose name I've probably mangled.
He is Lebanon's new president.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
After years of gridlock, Lebanon's parliament elected him the chief military commander as president. His win could unlock money for post-war reconstruction. This is where it gets interesting. So the parliament, for the first time in 2 years, actually voted to elect somebody as a president.
All right.
The previous...
They have not had that?
In 2 years, they couldn't agree on who to elect. And this is Lebanon, not Syria now.
Right.
But in Lebanon, just really fascinating stuff here. Okay?
Yes.
And this is from Wikipedia, which is the
so it's true.
A good metaphor for my superficial understanding of overseas politics. But I'm relying on it because I don't know better. Islam in Lebanon has a long and continuous history. Remember, when you're talking about the Middle East, the first thing you have to ask is, Sunni or Shia? The question that George W. Bush didn't ask before he went into Iraq.
Right. And now everybody knows everybody's asking it.
You got to ask that question before you go anywhere.
But then you're discovering there are also 19 other sects.
That's the point. Islam in Lebanon has a long and continuous history. According to an estimate by the CIA, it's followed by 69% of the country's total population, up from about 30 in the 50s, which doesn't count Druzes.
Right.
Sunnis make up
31.9%.
12er Shia make up 32.
12er.
Smaller percentages of other Shia branches, such as Alawites, Ismailis.
We remember them from Syria.
Yes. The Druze community is designated as one of the 5 Lebanese Muslim communities by the rest of the world. Most Druze don't identify as Muslims.
Interesting.
And they don't accept the 5 pillars of Islam.
Well, that would do it for me.
Why is Lebanon complicated? Well, here's an example.
You're a Muslim. I am not. You are.
For the purposes of the census, you are.
Interesting.
Yes, but I'm not in real life. Well, yes, but why are you cooperating with Israel? Because I'm not who you think I am.
Yeah, right. Well, that should be. That's another good tip about their Islamic adherence too. You
are Islamic extremist. That's
I am
impossible.
Not.
Not a Muslim.
Yeah, Druze. The one and only thing I know politically about Druze is they tend to be kind of like, hey man, wherever I'm living, if you're the government, that's cool with me. I don't agree with you. I don't disagree with you. I just want to be a Druze, I guess. Wow. All right. So there's a lot going on in Lebanon. All right.
Interesting,
though,
that except
they
nobody hates
fight them. Over whether or not Druze are you can let them tell you whether they're
right. Here's the other interesting thing about Lebanese politics. Under the terms of an agreement known as the National Pact between the various political and religious leaders of Lebanon, the president of the country has to be a Maronite.
Oh, what?
The prime minister has to be Sunni.
I see. I think.
And the Speaker of Parliament
Maronite
has to be Shia.
That's limiting.
That's how you avoid civil war when it's like 30-30-30.
Let me tell you about their record on avoiding civil war.
Well, they've done a reasonable job considering.
Lately, Syria. I suppose.
Who are you comparing them to? Comparing to Lebanon 20 years ago?
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
So that's why this happened.
Maronite.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Oh, a Christian ethno-religious group.
Oh, by the way,
are Maronites.
You may be surprised to hear
not
nobody
Marmite
exactly agrees or will swear to these statistics. Yeah. So if the CIA says that Islam is followed by 69.3% of the country's total population, that 0.3 isn't so clear.
Right. Some of them say they're not. All right. It's an interesting
Again, we're talking about Lebanon, but really, really interesting. And so you have a situation where you finally have the beginnings of some stability,
well,
and you say, well, how is it that the parliament, which barely can meet, actually agreed on anything? And here's the interesting part of the answer. Because the speaker in parliament has to be Shia.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not. Not for them, clearly, yes.
A hefty, I don't know if it's a majority or not, doesn't matter, but a hefty amount of parliament is controlled by Hezbollah and Shia groups. There's another Shia political group besides Hezbollah, and the two of them together make a very important bloc. So to get this guy to be president, because he was currently serving as the commander of the Lebanese army, you had to basically suspend the rules. In order to do that, you needed a pretty big majority. In order to do that, you needed the backing of Hezbollah and the Shia groups. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So it turns out this guy, who is now the new president, in a weird configuration of who knew this was going to happen, happens to be backed by both the U.S. and Hezbollah. Otherwise, he never would have gotten this appointment.
Together again.
U.S. and Hezbollah. The whole Middle East mess, which is awful with people dying and it's horrible, you can actually see some green shoots there.
Be careful about who shoots there.
No, I'm not talking about that kind of shooting. I'm talking about like growing leaves and
cypress
spring,
trees.
And that kind of thing. I mean, it's possible that there's reconfigurations that actually, I should whisper this, help the people in the region.
Wow. That would be fantastic,
Which would be wonderful, and that's one of the reasons why it's so interesting, and that's why we did the Who Is, and we should really follow it.
Wow.
Lebanon remains a relatively secular country, but of course the militias, control a lot of land and power, and it turns out the brokered peace agreement between Israel and Hezbollah, the ceasefire, requires some pulling back of both groups, Israel and Hezbollah, from southern Lebanese territory, and it is to be taken over by the Lebanese army, which can only happen if they actually have a real government, which is what this first step is about.
Yes, and that has to be headed by a Southern Baptist, which is difficult.
But it turns out the guy who's the president has some experience with the army because, he ran it.
Right.
So, maybe there'll be an actual ceasefire.
Maybe. How interesting that they came to. I mean, there must be some really solid reason, you hope, but behind that's an odd thing. I've never seen anything quite like it where religious requirements for certain jobs that remain stable. I've seen, there needs to be one of these, one of these, and they rotate.
Who has the keys to the mosque in Jerusalem?
Why? I didn't have them. Did you?
I don't know.
Are you saying I lost them? I don't know. This is interesting the way they do it. I'm sure there's probably another couple of countries that run it this way. I guess I'm more familiar with. There needs to be one of each in the government.
There are 2 Muslim families,
but that's it.
CNN, because I had vague recollection. So thank you for Google for letting me look it up quickly. 2 Muslim families entrusted with the care of holy Christian site for centuries. These 2 Muslim families have been entrusted with the key, which is enormous. Like it takes 2 hands to hold it.
That's why you need 2 families.
The key to one of Christianity's holiest sites is held by a Muslim family, and it has been for centuries. This is more than just tradition. It's the very essence of Jerusalem, part of what makes the Old City's cultural and religious history so special. There's an ancient cast-iron key, 500 years old. The key is 12 inches long with a triangular metal handle and a square end, and it's the key to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where many believe Jesus Christ was crucified and entombed. So,
Yes, I mean...
But it's, Muslim family.
Sure. And... I don't know. I guess
tradition,
it is.
But it's more than tradition. And so, I'll let people who know a lot more about that story tell it. But the point is,
what is the point?
Having known that story, at least vaguely in the background, hearing that Lebanon had rules for who could be what is, okay, I get it.
I guess so.
Well, you have a really volatile area.
East.
Sometimes you got to come to these agreements.
And it's interesting. So I don't know whether that was an intentional thing, like we want Muslim families to hold the key to this, or whether it was more like, well, we've lost the Crusades and we need to leave now, but this guy was nice to us while we were here.
Well, it's a whole backstory there. Maybe we'll go out, maybe we'll do it on Monday if I have a chance to look it up.
I don't know.
And pretend to be knowledgeable about it.
Well, you don't need to do that, but yeah, well, it is interesting. I think we spent some time, I don't know, years ago about the strange changeover in history of which Middle Eastern dynasty, as the British would say, thinks they are the guardians of the Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem, and how it used to be Ottoman Empire, and so Turkish focused, and then shifted to Saudi focused.
Saudi-ish.
But actually shifted to like Jordanian, because they were nearby, and then it was like Jordan. The oil explosion meant no, Saudi Arabia will be the guardian. Interesting. And now,
well, but of course you've put your finger on it. I mean, the whole reason we do this show is to talk about interesting things, find out we're wrong, look it up, and then learn stuff. I mean, that's been going on for a decade.
Yeah, more than I've been wrong for an awful long time. All right, but yeah, you learn these things on the fly.
And I make you look it up.
Yeah. Like, what was the other Shia party in the parliament in Lebanon besides Hezbollah? And the answer is the Amal movement.
Yeah. What are the real rules for the Speakers Committee?
Yeah, right. Who gets in and who gets out?
Let's look it up. Let's find out. You already know. You knew and forgot, but I never knew. So let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And the new rule, apparently the Surgeon General of Lebanon needs to be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and no one else. I don't know how it happened.
That's very funny.
That's an interesting structure. I'm in no position to tell Lebanese people anything about their country, but I promise you, it's just interesting. I guess I'd love to know the process that made them land on that, but that would probably take 20 years and a PhD.
Right, exactly.
Or Wikipedia.
You can imagine, right? I mean, every single position is something different.
And it's not great, but by comparison to what, the chaos that could ensue, I assume it's better.
Right.
Wow.
The foreign minister must be Mexican-American.
So we should try that here.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
So let's switch gears here and
Tommy
talk about
Robinson.
something which is also important, but which we have way less control over.
All right.
Not that we have any control over the Middle East.
We do not.
This is from Vox.
Vox UK?
Vox doesn't do who is.
No.
But they do Vox explainers. Vox explainers.
Oh, right, yes. What is?
So this is, what is Santa Ana? This is the unusually strong force behind the apocalyptic fires in L.A. This is not a typical Santa Ana. Okay. And yes, I heard the term 100-mile-an-hour winds used last night on ABC World News.
See? Okay, I knew it.
I know that they're talking about hurricane-force winds. And right here they say sustained powerful winds reaching nearly 100 miles an hour. And they're quoting the L.A. Times. And they would know. They're in L.A.
Yes, but they are owned by a jerk.
Are driving fast-moving wildfires near Los Angeles, spewing smoke, destroying homes, closing roads. The Palisades Fire along the coast near the Santa Monica Mountains has burned more than 5,000 acres. The Eaton Fire near Pasadena has torched 2,200 acres. These are areas I've been to and sort of know.
Well, there's millions
The blazes
of people
have killed at least 2 people. Actually, I think it's up to 5.
Oh.
Other smaller fires are also burning. Gosh. They are stunning in their scale and speed. They go from ignition to thousands of acres in a day.
Yeah.
But fire forecasters have been warning since the beginning of the year that conditions were ripe for massive infernos in Southern California. And this was an exceptionally well-predicted event, which you can't do anything about, which is really frustrating. In fact, they're running out of water.
Yes, which Trump is conflating into. Gavin Newsom drank all the water, and he won't let the fire hydrants have any because of a fish or something. Yeah.
Not enough snowfall in the surrounding mountains.
Never mind all that.
Impressive 2 to 6 degrees above normal. Global warming, the thing that's supposed to be a hoax.
Why didn't he just buy more water? Yeah,
but
I don't know.
On top of this,
golly. Yeah.
Santa Ana winds were unusually strong. They typically blow from the northeast toward the coast in wintertime, but this year, an unusually warm ocean and a meandering jet stream are giving these gales an additional speed boost, like pointing a hairdryer at Los Angeles. Except a giant hairdryer.
Right. Not the kind that they like. There's typically lots of giant hairdryers pointed in Los Angeles, but this is a large one that is all right. I've seen some video of what it's like, and I mean, it's everything you don't want with a fire. Even places where, this is an ember, it's dying out, all of a sudden gets whipped up back into an inferno, and not a disco inferno, the bad kind.
Right. If you've ever blown on a fireplace fire in order to try to get it started,
that's what's happening. That is.
Wow. Southern California Santa Ana winds often arise in winter. This is not a typical Santa Ana, but the time of year when you expect it, yes. And the mechanisms, which are also, there are Diablo winds, which sounds worse.
Yeah, you would think, right?
Cool air from inland mountains rolls downhill toward the coast. The air compresses as it moves to lower altitudes. Remember, we talked about this yesterday. It squeezes through the canyons, heating up and drying out like a bicycle pump. And then you get things that make it worse. The band of the Pacific Ocean near Southern California remains unusually warm. High temperatures in the ocean can bend the jet stream. When high pressure settles over inland areas like the Great Basin northeast of L.A., it starts driving air over the mountains toward the coast, which is already happening. And the majority of wildfires in the U.S. are ignited by humans, but there's natural fires like lightning storms.
Right. Jewish space laser fires.
Well, the bad thing about Southern California is you get what are called dry lightning storms. I mean, you get the lightning, but not the rain.
Okay.
That's like the worst possible combo. I mean, it'd be okay to get the rain without lightning, but having lightning without rain, that is bad. That starts fires.
I guess it would. Yeah. Even with the rain.
And it's not known yet where these fires came from.
Okay. That's why you're able to say things like, they came from Jewish space lasers, Gavin Newsom lit them on purpose because he wants to groom children, things like that.
Right. So weather whiplash, the swings between extreme rainfall and drought, are seemingly more common. And I actually read a comment from Aaron Astor, who is a historian who I follow on X, on Twitter, who noted he lives in Tennessee, and he said, I've talked to a lot of Tennessee people who moved here from California.
Yeah.
And I had asked them how come they moved here, and I had thought it would be like taxes or politics or stuff like that. And all of them said it's the wildfires.
Not the earthquakes or mudslides?
No, they could deal with those. The wildfires are just overwhelming.
Yeah, well, they are, and they're doing a good job overwhelming people right now.
Yeah.
It's
so again,
incredible.
I wanted to acknowledge all of that. It's not like we don't want to talk about them. They're hugely important. It's just like, what do you do about it? You can't fund this out of existence. You can't put more money into the fire department and that'll fix it. That's not what's going on here.
That's true. Although it does coincide with large
taking money away
cuts.
is bad, but putting more money in doesn't fix the problem.
Yeah, I've seen a big complaint about that. Apparently, lots of money cut from the fire department and moved to the police department. The police department should be beating the crap out of these fires. Is what they should be doing. Why don't you shoot or beat them up?
People, so
All right. Well, some of that is good. But yeah. Meanwhile, the Trumpists and Trump himself are, doing everything they can to try to blame the fires. Yeah, essentially blame the fires on certain ethnic groups, or it's DEI that did this to the fires. And by the way, tweets yesterday or Truth Social posts or whatever from both Donald Trumps, Jr. and Senior, just among them the most despicable things you've ever seen. This guy's supposed to be president soon, and they are rooting for more deaths in the fire so that they can say it's really DEI lit these fires somehow. I don't know how, why, doesn't make any sense, but there's a million people that are willing to agree with that. And this is a joke, literally, to them. Don Jr. joking, should we rename DEI DIE? Because that's what people are doing in these fires. Way to be a help, guy. Just the president's son. No one look over here.
In the few minutes we have left before the end of the hour, got to get a little local here.
All right.
Your local.
Mine. Oh.
This is a post from Blue Virginia, and they have a new Emerson College poll of the 2025 Virginia governor's race, and I have to give you some caveats.
Yeah, we're getting to that.
But this is Abigail Spanberger leading Winsome Earl Sears by 1 point, 42-41.
Well, naturally. She's in the middle of the rotor, so some of her support she's willing to give to Sears to be balanced.
Big racial and gender gaps in the poll along the lines of what we saw with Trump versus Harris. Mm-hmm. And Blue Virginia analyzes it a little bit further and says, there's a couple of things you have to keep in mind. It's early.
It is that.
People aren't paying attention. The Trumpers are already lined up behind Sears, Winsome Sears, but the Democrats, as usual, probably won't even get it together till later. However, do not take the governor's race for granted. We already saw that with a Republican governor in charge now, who cannot follow himself because, you're term limited.
We could overrule that immediately with Trump. Thank you.
And this is going to be because the governor's race in Virginia is always off season, so to speak, off year.
Yes, an off year. They're all off.
It's a base election, and whichever base turns out wins.
I see.
So the thing about that is typically what happens in Virginia, not always, but New Jersey, Virginia, and other off-year, off-season elections, whoever's in the White House, the other party tends to have a slight advantage.
That happens.
So because of backlash. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on that says, okay, I saw the poll. I don't know what it means. But what it does mean is that Democrats are not a lock in Virginia. We already knew that because of your current fleece vest
Republican
governor.
Now. Right. And
however, just a reminder, because people may not know her, this is from the Virginia Democrats. Oh. And I don't know when this is September 5th, 2024. So this is about a year ago.
Well, less than that. September 2024. Last year, yes.
Yeah, it's last year.
Right, okay.
I mean, a couple of weeks ago was last year.
You're writing checks. Got it.
So today, Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears announced her run, says the Virginia Democrats, for governor.
Well, I'll be.
A couple of months ago. Her extreme record includes claiming after a woman becomes pregnant, the body is not her body, the baby is not her body, saying she's got her own body, she's got her own blood, it's not her blood, it's not hers. She has no claim on it, the state does, basically.
I see. Oh, okay. That's very small government of you, yeah.
Sears has tried to base her staunch anti-choice extremism on the widely debunked conspiracy theory that abortion clinics sell baby parts. She supported extreme abortion bans like in Texas. She's a longtime opponent of LGBTQ plus rights, running on her proud opposition to marriage equality. She campaigned with and celebrated E.W. Jackson, a staunch anti-LGBTQ bishop who's a long history of spewing hateful rhetoric, and long supported stripping funding from public schools, the issue in Virginia that matters besides transportation and traffic, to funnel into unaccountable private and charter schools, leading the most recent legislative push to do so. So, she's a right-wing nut job, and she's only a point behind. And that's where the country is right at the moment, and that's what depresses people. But as I said, she may be a victim of the backlash against the party in power.
Right.
And the race hasn't even started yet, and so don't assume anything. Yes, she can win. No, she hasn't won yet.
Yeah. All right, well, it will be our job to...
What if Abigail Spanberger actually runs a good campaign?
I don't know.
She's campaigned for stuff before and won.
Yes. Right. I don't know.
We don't know.
I guess,
we'll
I guess if she campaigns and wins, she will give the Republicans half of her lunch money.
That's a TBD, right?
Yeah.
To be determined.
I guess so. All right. Well, I will be in the unusual, and I'm not looking forward to being in the position of having to say, yeah, Abigail Spanberger for the full year. But that's what I will do.
You're stuck with it, buddy.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I wasn't so enthusiastic. I'm rarely super enthusiastic about who I get handed as a candidate, but I never let it stop me anyway.
Exactly.
I just say, oh, well,
just,
I would
for
probably
the record,
be better.
We don't have
but...
time to talk about this today,
okay.
But I just thought it was interesting. Patricia Murphy, writing in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, does the from Georgia, Jimmy Carter looks a whole lot different than he does from Washington. Jimmy Carter sold the presidential yacht, stopped the White House booze, generally enraged members of Congress during his term in office, but this week, Washington is giving him the respect he deserved all along. Her column for the AJC, my take on this is they still don't like him in Washington. They still resent everything Carter stood for. They still resent that he walked for his inaugural. Remember that?
Yes.
They still resent that
So
he told
angry.
the truth. And ex-presidents like Clinton and Obama didn't love him, because he would speak out. He said, no, what you're doing is wrong. Like, what you're doing is, like, not morally okay. You can't take money for your foundation from this, that, and everything, And so they sort of distanced themselves from him. They were closer to George H.W. Bush than they were to Carter.
Oh. Well, too bad.
I'm just saying, but from Georgia, looks a whole lot different. Great man with a great legacy.
All right.
Anyway, that's the story, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
All right, very good. It should be super crazy by Monday, and we'll see. If you want to take some bets on who will be said to be readying for an invasion of by next Monday, let me know. You can text
we're going
me.
to invade Tommy Robinson.
That's next. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. All right, lots going on. Oh, it looks like maybe the current, happening right now thing. It looks like live streaming video. I went to CBS News because I had another story I wanted to put aside. But I guess a funeral service for Jimmy Carter happening now, and so all the dignitaries, former presidents, etc., are on hand. Whether they liked him personally or not, a normal person says, well, you show up for a funeral like that, even if I, had my differences. I don't know. They have scanned the crowd a little bit here. I can't say for certain whether I saw the Obamas in the audience there, but I'm sure they're there. Here comes the current president of the United States and First Lady of the United States. The Bidens making their way in now. I am sure that... well, I don't know. I guess the Obamas are there. I don't know. I didn't see them. Like I said, it wasn't like I was scrutinizing the crowds. All right, here we go. There's another shot. There they are. I see President Obama. There's Trump is there as well. And whatever. People are sitting near them. And there's Bill Clinton. And all right, just sort of letting you know that it happens. That's what's going on. That's the video that they're running on, I guess, in everything, because it's an important. Oh, there's Mike Pence, and there's nobody hanging him. Oh, Al Gore is there. Well, you could expect it's quite a crowd. So I guess, is this at the National Cathedral, which was always a strange and amazing institution. I can't believe we actually have one, but don't tell James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, but we do. Anyway, so this is the video that's running on a page I had open because I thought it might be of some interest. And I don't know whether to make this out to be serious analysis, sane washing. I don't know what's going on, but it was a headline, grabbed my attention. Why would CBS run this headline? I don't know. Why would Trump want Greenland and the Panama Canal? Here's what's behind U.S. interests. And I was mostly interested to see, are they going to tell me what Greg told me yesterday, Russian oil tankers, or anybody's oil tankers for that matter? And it looked like initially this thing was accompanied with a chart that tended to argue something similar. So let's take a quick look here. Who's writing this? Haley Ott, Amy Picchi, 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 and Ibrahim Aksoy. If I have any of those names right, let me know. President-elect Donald Trump, during a long news conference on Tuesday, and that's all they had to say about it, a long news conference. A crazy-ass news conference? Yes. Long is what we'll say. On Tuesday, spoke about his interest in securing U.S. control of Greenland and the Panama Canal, and said he would not rule out the use of military force, because he doesn't rule out anything, right? Will you accept the results of the election? I'm not ruling out not accepting it. It's interesting, and I guess if you're inclined to say, well, that's just Trump being Trump about anything, I've come to the conclusion, really, that I'm okay saying that about pretty much anything. He says, if you ask him to rule something out, he'll say, I don't know what's going to happen. And he doesn't. So he's kind of telling the truth there. We'll see what happens, right? I don't know. I can't predict anything. I don't know anything. I don't know what you're supposed to do normally. I don't know what you're supposed to do in a case of emergency. We'll see what happens. It's literally, I will also see what happens when the time comes, because I have no plans for this. So anyway, will you rule out the use of military force? I don't know. No, because maybe I'll say I would like to peacefully take control of Greenland, and maybe Denmark will bomb us in response. And then we're not just going to sit there and take it. We'll have a military response. So will I rule it out? No. The Danish are a very warlike people. They will get in longboats and row over and frequently raid the coasts, if that happens. I see where you're coming from in that respect, sir. But, you can say, well, they're asking you, will you rule out resorting first to military force? And that might be out no, too. They may say something very, very nasty, very, very not so nice about me. And then I'll have no choice but to bomb them or invade. And in his mind, that may actually be true. But, okay, so why the interest? He spoke about his interest in securing control of Greenland and Panama Canal, said he wouldn't rule out the use of military force. Below, that is to say, next, is a look at where the two places are, God, America, and why Trump might want the U.S. to control them. All right, well, where's Greenland? I mean, I know. Do you know? I think we all know here. We know where the Panama Canal is. It's in Panama. But do you know where Panama is? Yeah, I would say probably our audience knows where Greenland is. They've looked at maps. Many people have seen maps and not really looked, and they don't know. So I guess we got to catch everybody up. Greenland is located to the northeast of Canada. And it's largely covered by the Greenland ice sheet, or at least was anyway, the largest island in the world, but home to only around 60,000 people. It's freezing. It is a semi-autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark with its own elected government and flag and everything. Its location between the U.S., Russia, and Europe makes it strategic for both economic and defense purposes, especially as melting sea ice has opened up new shipping routes through the Arctic. That's true. People have always kind of wanted that. They didn't realize that it would come at the expense of the climate of the planet. But now that they're coinciding, they get it. But some people just don't care very much. Well, we'll get to do the shipping. Yeah, to what end? And no one has any money anymore because we're all living underground. Okay. Well, at least we can run ships through here. But it is a good reminder about the nature of the layout of the globe. It's round, it's three-dimensional and round, and that's how you end up having Greenland not only between the United States and Europe, which we all understand from seeing flat paper maps, but the United States Greenland between the United States and Europe and Russia, like up over the top. Oh, yes. Okay. I see you now. That makes some sense. It made sense before, but in case you're not thinking of it that way. So shipping. Yeah, that's kind of what Greg told us. Who's shipping, though, really, is the next question. There's also the location of the northernmost U.S. military base. Yeah, but it was even when Denmark controlled it. So there's no real need to control the entirety of the geography just because there's a base there. Like having a military base there, do we control Japan? No. We have bases in places, and sometimes that's just enough. Anyway, we need Greenland, or this is Trump, we need Greenland for national security purposes. Trump said on Tuesday, I'm talking about protecting the free world. No, you're not. I mean, that's what people think of when we say things like national security purposes, but you're not protecting the free world. You're giving up the free world in bits and pieces to Russia, though you might have an interest in Greenland and Panama to make it look like I'm as strong as Putin. I'm also annexing things in our area, our sphere of influence. That's what they call it, sphere. Very few people ever heard this word sphere before, but we're making it popular. We're letting people know about it. You look. This is pretty interesting. This is another great. I guess maybe this is sane washing after all. It'd be one thing if the president or incoming president of the United States said, well, we're looking at it for national security purposes. That's very dumb or whatever. But you kind of leave it at that and say, I want to protect the free world. Yeah. Okay. Generalisms, right? You're safe there. But then he says, you look at, and remember, I have always said that that's a tip off. That's a tell for Trump. When he says you look at, or if you take a look at, one, he's going to begin lying and saying, but two, he's very likely to be saying things that don't make any sense at this point. And I think when he realizes that there's no connections to be made here and that the thing doesn't sound like it's going to make a lot of sense, or he doesn't have any evidence for the thing he's about to say, he'll say, take a look at, and then blurt something out. And people will say, I never heard of the idiotic thing that you just mentioned. Well, I know, that's why you need to take a look at it. You see? Anyway, so what comes after it today? You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside. What? What are we looking at now? Binoculars? I don't even need binoculars. What am I looking at? Birds? What do you mean? You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside. You have China ships all over the place. Chinese ships? Yeah, maybe. You look at Chinese ships all over the place and you don't need binoculars for that? You do, because they're in the ocean, you're on land. But okay. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We are letting that happen. Chinese and Russian ships can sail over the oceans. That's kind of the way it is in law. But all right, what's he talking about? Well, then the piece is then illustrated with a map of the world, of the globe, as seen from, as seen from space over, I don't know, Kazakhstan or something. It's a view that includes, the Eurasian landmass and a good part of Africa as well, plus the Indian Ocean, and then over up at the top there, from over the North Pole, Greenland, Canada, Alaska, United States is down there below that. So what are they mapping out? A great circle around the Eurasian landmass, sea route. The northern sea route goes between through the Bering Strait between Alaska and Russia, along the top of Russia. Now you're able to circumnavigate this because the sea ice has retreated in the North Pole. So you're able to sail over the top of Russia, over the top of Scandinavia, down between, what are we looking at here, Sweden and the UK, take a pit stop docking in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and then go down around Europe through the Straits of Gibraltar, through the Mediterranean, and then through the Suez Canal into the, what are we talking about here, Red Sea, and then out into the Indian Ocean, down south around India, make your way through the islands of Southeast Asia, back up around to the port in China, and then again down around Korea, in through the Sea of Japan, and back around to Russia and through the Bering Strait again. A big circle, you see. Okay, and so therefore what? I guess the argument is going to eventually be that Trump has some strategic vision, which somebody handed him, is that we should have a big circle around the North American landmass and be able to circumnavigate using Greenland and the Panama Canal and the Northern Passage on our side. Except we could do that now, so I don't know what. But I guess he believes the Chinese are running both the Panama Canal and maybe also going to take over Greenland. And we can't have that. Well, we can't, but was it happening? I don't know. The Northwest Passage, or Northern Sea Route, was first crossed in the winter months by a Russian commercial vessel several years ago. It used to be blocked by ice. And is a shorter route linking East Asia's major ports to Europe and the Atlantic Ocean. Western powers have already voiced concerns about Russia and China using it to boost their presence in the North Atlantic. The Americans have a strong interest in overseeing the activities of foreign countries in Greenland because it's such a big security asset for foreign states. And due to that, any investment or activity from the American point of view may be seen as a security threat. Frank Sedgerson, an associate professor at the University of Copenhagen, told CBS News on Wednesday. So we're probably talking about the University of Copenhagen, and that his name is probably Frank Sayerson instead of Sedgerson. But maybe he's an American living in Copenhagen, or Copenhagen, as we like to say. Oh my goodness, what's this? Now we're going to be hearing from a human rights lawyer in Greenland. So what are Greenlander names looking like? Pernil, maybe, but that's not pernil like the Spanish Central American pork pernil, but pernil, Pernille. Okay, pernil, and it's really basically Benjaminson, although they may say Benjaminson, maybe even, but Benjaminson, essentially. Human rights lawyer in Greenland told CBS News the ties between the territory's semi-autonomous government and the Danish government had grown tense in recent years, and Trump could be trying to take advantage of that. But that will probably have the effect of driving them back together. He has noticed that there is a tense relationship, he has not, between Denmark and Greenland, and seen opportunities in that. She said, Pernille is a woman, a woman human rights lawyer in Greenland, though we only say that because, I don't know, I guess Benjamin made me think that it was possibly a man, but that's the last name. Although, I guess, so Greenlanders don't do like the Icelanders do. If it was Pernille Benjaminson's daughter rather than Benjamin's son, I might have guessed that. But the Danish also have abandoned that styling. Anyway, Greenland also has oil, natural gas, and highly sought-after mineral resources. That's a more traditional understanding, or way of understanding American interest there. Those mineral resources, which include rare earth elements, which all of a sudden everybody is an expert in, just like with every internet sensation, right? So everybody's talking about this, and now everybody considers themselves an expert in rare earth minerals now as well. They've only been lightly explored and developed because they're mostly covered with ice. Used to be, anyway. It says Jose W. Fernandez, the U.S. Department of State's Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. He said this at the Minerals Security Partnership event in Greenland in November. Now, that was the Biden administration's approach to the rare earth minerals in Greenland. Why don't we have a minerals security partnership? We'll be partners with Greenland. We'll show them why it would be good for them to cooperate with us. The Trump approach, let's kick their asses and take their minerals. But you can see why that's exciting to Americans. They love that stuff. Greenland may have significant reserves of up to 31 different minerals. Like, that's the number of flavors of ice cream at Baskin-Robbins. That is no joke. Including lithium and graphite, both of which are needed to produce electric vehicle batteries and also, I guess, stabilize people suffering from various mental illnesses and making pencils, but that's rather mundane. But, electric vehicle batteries, that is a thing. According to a 2023 report assessing the island's resources. Now, it's likely that those things were used to produce electric batteries even before this report was ever conceived. But then we're just talking about poor syntax, really, making the confusion, not anything else. Those deposits are likely to draw the interest of Tesla CEO Elon Musk. He has an interest in electric vehicle batteries. As it turns out, he's become a close advisor to Trump. Thank you, CBS. After providing more than $270 million last year to back his and other Republican candidacies, currently, lithium production is dominated by Australia. Oh, no. Australia. I knew the Aussies were... Oh, okay. Well, actually... Oh, no, I'm sorry. Also by Chile. I'm not feeling it. Currently, lithium production is dominated by Australia, okay, Chile, yes, and China. Aha! Finally, we get to the heart of it. And China. China produces about 65% of the world's graphite, the report noted. What if Greenland was producing more of it? I don't know. But I guess we'd be paying less money to China, and China... Therefore, something. Time for some beautiful chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago. We'll solve everything. Greenland also has the potential to provide a significant amount of rare earth minerals like, how rare is it? So rare, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Neodymium? I don't know. Neodymium. Eum, I can figure that out. Neo-eum. Dime? I don't know. It's so rare, no one has ever talked about it to me. Which is used to make magnets used in electric motors, the 2023 report said. And it was probably true before 2023 as well. Magnets. How do they work? Neodymium. And it's in Greenland. Now there's an answer. And now what are we going to do with the Insane Clown Posse song? Now it doesn't even make any sense. Now, all of a sudden, it doesn't make sense. Currently, China produces about 70% of rare earth elements. So we could really stick it to the Chinese with this whole Greenland thing, except those minerals are there now. And the people of Greenland, relatively friendly, I would think. They'd be happy to get money from us in exchange for the minerals, even though it would probably wreck their ecology. And maybe they care about that. That could be it. Like, why can't we just buy it from them? Because they don't want to rip their land and mountains apart and destroy the environment further. Well, we can put a stop to that. What if we buy them and force them to do it? It's not for sale. Well, then what if we kick their ass and take it? Well, that's a model we understand. The world is currently too dependent on a small set of actors for mining and processing many critical minerals, Fernandez said in November. That was supposed to encourage them to give up some of their minerals in exchange for money. Anyway, demand for rare earth minerals is outstripping supply, which has kept prices high, according to the Swiss newspaper and economics. The Swiss newspaper, why do I have to do this now? New, I guess, Zürcher, from Zurich, maybe, Zeitung, which I don't remember what Zeitung was, but we looked that up once, I think. Anyway, still, there are significant hurdles to mining in Greenland, including environmental and cost issues, like ice. Stuff like that. What is the Panama Canal? What? And why would Trump want it? Wow. About 40% of U.S. container shipping currently travels through the Panama Canal, according to the trade publication Cargo Now. Not Kagro X, but Cargo Now. The canal serves as a shortcut between the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea, yes. And beyond that, the Atlantic Ocean. True. Thank you. Trump said that the United States needs the Panama Canal, and it just uses it. We go through it like anybody else, but we need it. We need to own it for economic security, falsely alleging that it is being operated by China. At least they said it was false. The Panama Canal is vital to our country. Oh, is this him? Yeah. It's vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China! And he said that. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It's not a gift. It should never have been made. That is, the gift should not have been made. The canal, I think he still says, should be made. Panama's president, Jose Raul Mulino, has disputed Trump's claims. That's nice. He's actually, as you might have imagined, more in favor of Panama owning Panama and therefore the Panama Canal. Of course, there is absolutely no Chinese interference nor involvement in anything to do with the Panama Canal, he said late in December. Oh, well, there's a nice map and explainer of how vessels transit the Panama Canal, and that's important because it's a lock-based system, and we learned all about Gatun Lake and the rise in elevation that you have to go through in order to make it through the canal. Very interesting, and in case you wanted some more information about it, there's some here. Panama's foreign minister, Javier Martinez Acha, said Tuesday that his government hadn't spoken formally with Trump or his team about the canal recently, but he reiterated previous comments from the country's president that the canal would remain under Panamanian control. The sovereignty of our canal is not negotiable and is part of the history of struggle and an irreversible conquest. Part of our history of struggle and an irreversible conquest. Well, don't call it a conquest, but part of our history with struggle and conquest, certainly. I get you there. China has also denied trying to claim any control. So, whatever that's worth, over the canal, with Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning saying in November that Beijing would always respect Panama's sovereignty over the canal and recognize the canal as permanently neutral international waterway. Then there's a bit about a history of Greenland. The Kingdom of Denmark began colonizing Greenland in the early 18th century, hundreds of years after the Vikings from the same distant land first arrived to set up residency. That's a shortcut on the history of Denmark. It was not until World War II that the U.S. established a presence on the island, or anywhere for that matter, when then Danish ambassador to the U.S., Henrik Kaufmann, refused to surrender to the rule of Denmark's Nazi occupiers. Got it. Denmark was liberated from Nazi occupation in 1945, but the U.S. did not leave its military base, Pitufik Space Base, which to this day remains the American military's northernmost installation. I guess even more northerly than the Thule Air Force Base. But okay. The history of the Panama Canal. Well, there was a man, a plan, a canal, and then Panama. And what else do you need to know? Built by the U.S., true, although using the labor of imported / maybe sort of kind of enslaved or indentured Caribbean laborers, but the U.S. was the one who told them what to do. Between 1904 and 1914, it serves as a shortcut between the oceans, of course, first managed by the U.S. government for decades, which caused tension with Panama. And in the 1970s, the U.S. and Panama signed a treaty agreeing to the permanent neutrality of the canal. The U.S. committed to relinquishing control of the canal and did so fully in 1999. It was phased in, sort of, I guess you could say. The canal, now run by the Panama Canal Authority. So there you go. Do you think it's sane washing? I mean, some of this stuff needs to be explained. And at some point, I guess you'll start seeing serious people referring to the policy as a serious policy. And these will be the seeds of the truth behind it, I guess. I mean, shipping is certainly important to U.S. national security. I don't think that Trump's picture of the threat to American shipping is accurate or true, but I don't know that that's going to matter. And of course, that is subject to change, right? We have agreements. We're currently on, good terms with Panama and Greenland, etc. But, Trump is going to be president. So being on good terms with anybody is subject to change and change very quickly. All right, we need to shift our focus after the break back to more domestic issues and probably take a look at what's developing in court, both in the Supreme Court and elsewhere, I guess. And then maybe check back in on the National Archives, because I mentioned briefly yesterday that Trump has ideas about replacing the archivist, even though he has not been in conflict with this current archivist. And in fact, this current archivist has kind of been, if anything, a little bit, if not pro-Trump. I mean, what she's trying to do is insist that she's a political independent and should therefore be left alone. But she's, what does that mean? That usually means being a little more Trumpy than you really should be, in the hopes that he'll leave you in place and let you continue and go on about your business. But he's looking for lackeys, and if you're not an outright lackey, then no future for you. But an interesting argument made by people I don't like at the National Review that they should not fire her. Maybe we'll get to that after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Last segment for the day. We still have Friday to catch up on some things. By the way, Darwin Darko chiming in with a good comment here. Good question. Always worth reminding ourselves of this. This is a mystery to me, too. He says, I never understood why Trump simply doesn't lie instead of hedging when he talks to the media about stuff, anything really, but in particular, the use of military force. Like, why not just say, even if he fully intends to invade both Greenland and Panama and maybe Canada as well, like, let's say he's made that determination. What is it about Trump that we there's nothing we know about Trump that would lead us to believe that he wouldn't just say, I'll just say no. No, I won't use military force, even if he fully intends to try and do so anyway. Trump would just say no. I don't intend to do that. And that's right. That's true. But this is just one of the enduring mysteries of Trump. For me, I haven't really figured this one out yet. Like, why doesn't he just lie? And I don't know why it is. Like, why? I'm still puzzling over why in the closing days of his administration, right? And he wants to make Jeffrey Clark Attorney General and overturn the election using that mechanism. And top DOJ officials say, if you do that, we'll resign. Like, why he doesn't say, I don't care if you resign. I've fired FBI directors. I'm going to fire another one. I fire people all the time. I don't care about that. Oh, you're going to resign. Good, fine. I'll make somebody else acting whatever you are and do even worse things. I am not sure why he was worried about that. And I don't know why sometimes he does hedge and he says things in other contexts like this thing, like, I don't know what's going to happen. That's one thing. But he sometimes hedges about things, or he says, we never acted without prior authorization. I don't know, whatever. Or he has some official say that. And it's like, well, did you act without, this, that, or the other thing? When they parse things and they say, well, technically we didn't lie. He lies about everything. I have never understood why he kind of sort of tells the truth or stretches the truth when he could just lie outright. I am not sure about that. I guess it's one of the most normal things he does. And that's not saying a great deal, but it's an excellent point. Very true. Not sure why it happens, but it's clearly something that is a common practice for him. So maybe one day we'll unlock that and things will make more sense or be more predictable. But I don't know. It may be a fool's errand to try to find predictability in Donald Trump, certainly. Okay, so now that we've learned what we learned, or what we learned what other people needed to learn to understand the Greenland Panama Canal thing, up to and including what are Greenland and the Panama Canal and where are they, which is incredible. But a theory has now been constructed around it. And it's something that I guess you could, if you really, I guess this is part of the sane washing effort, right? If you wanted to try to make sense of the things that Donald Trump was saying, you could build a theory out of it this way. But it's still not out of the question that Donald Trump is just, he saw a map. What is this big thing here, up here? That's Greenland. Why don't we own that? Look what's in the way. There's a whole other country in the way. Well, screw that. That's Canada. That's not even another country. You're nuts. Well, no, he's a global strategist. Sure. Whatever. Okay. So I wanted to move over to the courts and other legal constructions and institutions like the National Archives and tell you what was going on. One, the news that we didn't get to yet that we hinted at when we were talking to Greg about the Supreme Court and their willingness to intervene in things and their willingness to flaunt the fact that they consider themselves to be above ethical considerations receives a big boost in the last day or so. And you've probably heard the news behind this. And so we can skip faster to the analysis, but he'll tell you along the way what the news was. Chris Geidner has written about developments yesterday in which it was revealed, as we were talking yesterday about Trump making an emergency petition to the Supreme Court to block sentencing in the New York case. And I have some bad news about that, by the way, which I think I parked in Pocket, but in a different article. But procedural technicality news that's not great. Where did I put it? I don't know. But one of these 2 or 3 pieces that I've got mentions it. Maybe it's this one from someone else's Substack, Harry Littman, I think. But okay, we'll get to that. Which, in case we never make it there, I got to blurt it out now. Procedurally speaking, it is sentencing. And remember, we're awaiting sentencing for Donald Trump, and we're fighting about whether or not we're going to be able to have a sentencing between now and January 20th. Even as the judge says, I'm not crazy, I'm not going to put him in jail, but I want to have sentencing, and they're going to impose. The thinking is the judge would impose what he calls unrestricted release, that he would basically say, you're sentenced to, X number of years in jail, but you don't have to go. You're going to be given unconditional release. So you're really going to serve no time, certainly, but we will sentence you to that time and then let you go from it. Why would you do something like that? Well, we know why we can't keep him in jail. That's not the question. If you know you can't keep him in jail, why bother is the question, right? And the answer is sentencing is what locks in your conviction. You can be convicted, that is found guilty by the jury, but I guess the legal system doesn't, hold you as a convicted felon until you're actually sentenced on the basis of your having been found guilty. That's kind of what locks it in. And I don't think I remembered that. And so, we've been counting the days since he's been a convicted felon. But in fact, it's been that many weeks, 32, 33, 34, somewhere in that neighborhood, weeks since his conviction, yes, by a jury, or the jury had found him guilty, but the conviction has not yet been locked in. In other words, if there's no sentencing, even if the whole thing is suspended, unless there's a sentencing held, you could technically, and he'll do it, walk away saying, I'm not a convicted felon. I've never been convicted because there was never a sentencing. That's what my legal experts tell me. And that's what he's striving for. It's not that he's going to go to jail for this thing because no one's got the guts to do that to him. And maybe that's even a good idea. But in the abstract, Never a good idea to not put Donald Trump in jail. But I think that's what's going on here. So that's part of what's driving things. In the meantime, as he is getting ready to file this thing, Donald Trump takes a phone call from / initiates a phone call to, I don't know which direction this went, Samuel Alito. They're chatting over something. Now, Alito claims, I was just calling the president to say that a former clerk of mine who's up for a job in the Trump administration, I was calling to give him a recommendation, which, I'm sure that happens. That probably does happen from time to time. Really, though, for the most part, when you put on your resume, I clerked for a Supreme Court justice, people take notice of that. They don't really need the extra phone call, but it couldn't hurt. Unless, of course, the guy is about to sit in judgment of an emergency motion of yours. So the sort of thing that you remember when Bill Clinton talked to somebody on an airport tarmac once because was it Bill Clinton? I can't even remember now. Maybe it was Obama. Gosh, I'm mixing it all up now. But a 45-minute meeting with somebody, a discussion because their planes were both on the tarmac at the same time. How dare you? But now, of course, it's no big deal. I'm chatting with a Supreme Court justice known to be in my pocket the day before I file an emergency motion, asking them to do something they have no right to do on my behalf, which I have no right to expect, but will happen anyway, maybe because of this conversation. Okay, so you heard that story. Chris Geidner treats it here at his, is it a Substack? Law Dork? Right. Well, okay. I have to say it out loud. That's what he called it. Trump and Alito, two men who disdain ethical constraints, chatted on Tuesday. Why is that of importance? Because the next day, Trump asked the Supreme Court to stop his New York criminal sentencing and to give presidents-elect complete immunity. Right. That's not where presidential immunity is supposed to apply. You should be safe from seeing that happen by the Supreme Court by they're saying, well, we're the ones who invented presidential immunity doctrine. We did it a couple of months ago. We remember it very well. It's for presidents, not people who aren't president. So don't worry about it. Nope, you're going to have to worry about it. Donald Trump is a former president, as you know, who is set to become president again on January 20th, despite having faced 4 felony prosecutions from 3 different prosecutors, one of which led to conviction, maybe sort of kind of, relating to actions that he took when seeking the presidency, while president, and after leaving the presidency. Sam Alito is a justice who, in addition to his flag issues, held private interviews with 2 conservative figures for glowing narrative-setting opinion columns, including with a lawyer who had a key case before the court in which they wrote that it is Alito's view that Congress has no authority to pass legislation relating to judicial ethics. Now, they have teamed up for everyone's favorite new nihilistic buddy comedy sketched out by Alito himself on Wednesday, as first reported by ABC News. Here's the news part of it. William, I don't know how he says, Levy, or something in between, Levi. William Levy, one of my former law clerks, asked me, says Alito, to take a call from President-elect Trump, so Trump initiated the call, regarding his qualifications to serve in a government position. That's downplaying the whole thing, but okay. I agreed to discuss this matter with President-elect Trump, and he called me yesterday afternoon. We did not, he says, discuss the emergency application he filed today. And indeed, I was not even aware at the time of our conversation that such an application would be filed. We also did not discuss, sounds like a confession, any other matter that is pending or might in the future come before the Supreme Court or any past Supreme Court decision involving the president-elect. Chris says, I sat here tonight reading this thinking it couldn't possibly be true. But of course it is fact. This is not a buddy comedy. It is instead the world Chief Justice John Roberts has given us, helped along by a lack of sufficient action to counter it from congressional and executive leaders. If no one in charge cares about people who break ethical rules, laws, and norms, then people who don't care about ethical laws, rules, and norms are going to simply ignore them. Or, as Fix the Court's Gabe Roth put it succinctly, they don't care because They know no one in Congress or the judiciary will hold them accountable for ethics violations. And yet, if Alito keeps acting like this, people like me and Roth are going to keep criticizing him, despite Roberts' New Year's Eve reprimand to court critics. And as you're learning, even the great normie himself, Greg Dworkin, being moved toward Supreme Court expansion in response to this. Roth also noted that Levy's father is former federal Judge David Levy, or Levi, depending on their preferences, and his grandfather is former Attorney General Edward Levy, the person who ran the Justice Department during the Ford administration, Gerald Ford's administration, in the aftermath of Watergate, in case that means anything to anybody. So maybe a phone, well, I don't know. Ordinarily, you'd say a phone call to Donald Trump. Not necessary here. The guy's grandfather was former attorney general. His dad is a federal judge. He clerked for a Supreme Court justice. The job is his. But Donald Trump might not know any of that. That's possible. And so you got to call him and say it. And then they'll say, oh, I understand. Nepotism. Gotcha. We're going to do that. The grandson, to be clear, is a full-grown adult, a Sidley Austin partner who was Bill Barr's chief of staff when he was attorney general and previously worked for Senator Mike Lee and the Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as Alito and Judge Anthony Scarica. Is that how he says his name? Sorry if it's wrong. He of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, which is actually where Alito came from, right? Anyway, not that matters. But basically, look, all the resume you need is there. You don't need to be making these phone calls. But okay. Per Alito, William Levy asked a sitting justice, Alito, to take a call from an incoming president, Trump, in the middle of two ongoing legal fights about issues relating to three of those prosecutions, both of which could have ended up at the Supreme Court, and one of which the day after the call happened. And Alito said yes. That's really the point here. He probably should have said, I didn't know that there was going to be a filing. You knew that a filing was coming. He's been saying he was going to do it since Monday. And he keeps coming to the Supreme Court with emergency petitions all the time. You probably just should have said, listen, Bill, however we refer to you informally, you're fine. You're going to get this job. Remember, you were a top assistant to one of Trump's attorney generals before. I mean, granted, he hates that guy now. I don't know, maybe the call's necessary. But you should never have said yes to this. But he did anyway. All of this because Trump allegedly needed Alito's thoughts somehow on Levy's qualifications for a legal job in his new administration in their Tuesday call. You just heard the qualifications. He didn't need anything about it. And Trump never misses an opportunity to leverage something else in one of these calls. Plus, he probably had no idea what the hell the call was about. Anyway, then when Trump's lawyers did go to the Supreme Court the next day, they argued on Wednesday that the president-elect should be given the complete immunity from prosecution that a sitting president gets. Particularly, as they say, quote, after his electoral win, that's wrong, they meant has, been certified, which happened on Monday. If nothing else, this capsule moment lays bare just how difficult tracking ethical questions is going to be in the coming years and how important it is that those of us covering government continue to speak out. Okay, so that kind of encapsulates the outrage of it all. Given, assuming that you know the heart of the story, which I think he did a pretty good job explaining as well. So what else do we want to add to that? Well, more about what's going on in the New York intervention that he's seeking here. Okay, along with what was the other thing I had? There was something I saw in my email yesterday that I marked. Oh, yes, right. Well, we can maybe make that a Friday thing. Now back to our regularly scheduled head scratching. More about the improper nature of the Supreme Court even being asked to intervene in the New York case. I've got two things. One, Harry Litman's Substack, and one from, I better do things this way. One from Steve Vladeck, I think. Always good to check in with him and see what he's got. And I think I might be able to fit the two of them in before we exit. Although, okay. See if I can get him open here. Here's Harry Littman. Do we have a description or a profile of Harry Littman? I don't think I have one handy. But suffice to say that this is the kind of person who would maintain a Substack called Talking Feds. And here we go. There is no irreparable injury here. Okay, I know that's a little bit, you probably caught you by surprise. What he's saying is he's going to be arguing about and explaining why the thing which Trump is asking for from the Supreme Court is just not a thing yet. A stay of proceedings in a state court asked for directly from the Supreme Court. What's happening here? The Supreme Court, he says, should deny Trump's stay motion, but that doesn't mean it will. All right, we're going to get a little legalese here. Most of my Substack entries, actually, we should probably skip over this because he's talking more about his schedule of Substack, and most are considered takes on recent news, but on occasion I'll serve up a hot take on an important issue like this one. Here it is. You know what it's about. It is Trump's brief to the Supreme Court trying to keep the Merchan sentencing for his New York convictions from going forward on Friday, and that's the sort of thing that he'll comment on, and so here he does it. Let's get right to it. Bottom line, the court should deny Trump's last-ditch effort, but the brief gives the court the building blocks to save the day for him, as they've done in the past. So guess what? You think they're going to take it? Probably. How the stay motion comes out will depend on the court's reading of its own expansive opinion in the Trump v. United States immunity case. You know, it occurs to me that I'm wondering whether how long is... Yeah, it's a pretty brief thing, I think, from Steve Vladeck. Vladeck's thing might actually lay the groundwork better for this kind of weedy look that Littman gives it. Let me reverse the order. All right, so stick with me here. We're skipping over to Steve Vladeck's Substack, one first. Trump versus New York, 11 days before his inauguration, President-elect Trump's emergency request that the Supreme Court block his sentencing in the New York hush money case presents an early litmus test for the judges. All right, let's get down to it. Although he says, I plan to devote this week's bonus issue to the latest installment of Karen's Corner. What? Not certain what that's about. But at any rate, the news once again got in the way, specifically the emergency application with the amusing, if ominous, docket number 24A666, in case you were wondering, filed by President-elect Trump asking the Supreme Court to block Friday's scheduled sentencing in the New York hush money case. Remember, that sentencing's supposed to happen tomorrow. There's a lot to say about Trump's request, filed by his intended nominee to be Solicitor General, John Sauer. That's another key issue in all of this. At its core, the argument is that the immunity that the Supreme Court recognized in the January 6th case last year undermines at least some of the guilty verdict in the New York hush money case. And so Trump shouldn't have to go through with sentencing until and unless his appeal in his conviction in that case has been fully resolved. You see what happened here? He got found guilty by the jury. He appealed. And he's saying, because I have immunity, you shouldn't sentence me until I get the results of my appeal. And that is not the way things usually work. Or as we say here on the show, that is not how this works! Right. Usually what happens is you get convicted by the jury, you get sentenced, and then you appeal it. And then if you win, they spring you. Sometimes they'll even say they'll hold the sentencing or the jail term in abeyance while you work out your appeal. But it's not, I got convicted by the jury and I want my appeal to happen before I get sentenced. It doesn't go that way. But he says, well, I'm immune, so it does. But immunity, that's not what immunity confers on you. The right to rearrange process is not part of the rights of immunity. And Littman gets a little bit more into that. We'll see what Vladeck has to say if we get to Littman. Okay, better hurry up here. So Trump, he says, argues that he shouldn't have to go through with sentencing until and unless his appeal of his conviction in that case has been fully resolved. In the post that follows, I endeavor to explain why the second part of that sentence doesn't follow from the first, and why the Supreme Court should deny Trump's application regardless of the extent to which it thinks there's merit to the immunity arguments. Spoiler alert, given that Trump's objections are to the admissibility of certain evidence and not the charges themselves, and given what Justice Merchan has already said about the sentence he's going to impose, i.e. there won't be any jail time, Trump can't show the requisite irreparable legal harm. We've jumped around a little bit in legalese, but we are short on time. I'll explain it to you. It is basically comes to this, and Littman makes this argument too, and maybe we'll spend some more time on it tomorrow. I see we're going to run out of time. But, one, because Justice Merchan in New York has said, look, we know the realities of this thing. We're not going to be able to send him to jail. We're going to sentence him based on the conviction. We'll give him unconditional release. He'll be able to go about his business as though he were never convicted, but he is. And that's now on the record. We're doing that. So what's the problem? Well, what Trump is asking for from the Supreme Court, remember specifically, is a stay of proceedings. What's the test on whether or not anyone who asks, Trump or otherwise, gets a stay from the Supreme Court? The stay from the Supreme Court is something that the Supreme Court will entertain under certain circumstances, none of which are present here, including that there would be irreparable harm caused to the defendant, in this case, Donald Trump, if they don't intervene. If there's no stay, if they don't stop things, there will be irreparable harm to Donald Trump. But what's in the offing here is being sentenced, having been found guilty by a jury, but not only being sentenced, which normally follows, like that's not an irreparable harm. That's a harm that's actually due to you. You're supposed to get that harm. And it doesn't matter whether it's irreparable or not. You got found guilty. This is what follows. But not only that, the judge has said there will be no jail and you'll be unconditionally released. So there's no harm of any kind except, I guess, reputational damage. And that is what Donald Trump is saying. Oh, that's irreparable harm. Well, but it's harm that you're supposed to get. You lost the case. I know, but I'm immune. You're not immune. That's the problem. One, no immunity should attach because they were unofficial acts. And two, that's not, that's not what immunity confers upon you. Littman, as I said, gets a little bit more into it. The prize in immunity is that you are supposed to be able to waive your immunity around before legal proceedings begin against you. Before you go through the ordeal of trial, you are able to waive around this writ. It's not really a writ, but you're supposed to be able to point to your immunity and avoid trial. But one, the trial has already happened. And so usually they say, well, we're giving you immunity so that you don't have to go through the ordeal of trial. Okay, fine. But one, the immunity didn't get created until after the trial had happened. And two, the immunity, it's too late to prevent the ordeal of trial. It will save you from a trial later on if they charge you with something else, but there's no point. In other words, the immunity, even if it's valid, can't undo the fact that you went to trial already. It arrived too late, and I'm sorry that makes you sad, but that's what immunity does. Just as a stay stops proceedings when there's irreparable harm in the offing, and there is none here, the immunity grant springs you from a trial, but the trial has already happened. You can use it later on another trial. You're the kind of guy who's likely to face another trial, but not that. And in addition to that, one of Trump's lawyers' claims is that, well, I wouldn't have been found guilty in the New York case, but for the fact that certain evidence was introduced at trial, which the immunity ruling from the Supreme Court later on would have held was inadmissible evidence because I claim it was evidence of official acts. It was not, and that's in dispute. But he claims that it was, or at least there's an open question as to whether or not it was. And since nobody has ever dealt with this kind of immunity before because it was just invented, maybe it's unsettled at best, right? No one has ever confronted this claim. But once again, we run into another problem. Immunity is not designed as a evidentiary defense. I know this is very weedy, but you're not supposed to be able to use this immunity to say it's not supposed to be part of the judgment over whether or not certain evidence is admitted. It's supposed to avoid the situation in which anyone's offering any evidence for consideration at all. It's supposed to spring you from a trial, not be used at trial to challenge certain evidence. It's not been used that way. That's not what it's for. And yet that's exactly how he's doing it. And he wants the Supreme Court to ignore all of that and save him from the indignity of having that conviction locked on the record by being sentenced to nothing. That's how hard he's fighting. He's doing emergency intervention at the Supreme Court to save him from being unconditionally released in the face of having been convicted on 34 counts of fraud, etc. That's where his mind is. He wants that to happen, and the new Solicitor General thinks that's a good use of everyone's time. It is not.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, let's say more about that tomorrow if we can get to it and nothing else explodes in the meantime, plus maybe some explanation about what's going on over at the archivist's office. In the meantime, it's time for me to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. He's from part of the West Coast that's not on fire, but he'll be telling you about the part that is, plus the rest of the world. See you tomorrow.